In today's video, we'll be making progress on several important parts of the house. We shall be preparing for electricity and plumbing, plastering the interior and exterior walls, working on the kitchen area, and installing the biodigester system. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on our tiny garden. And if you're new here, welcome. This channel follows the journey of rebuilding a tiny garden from scratch and slowly creating a simple space where I can grow food, spend time in nature, and build a tiny house one step at a time. Slowly but surely, this little house is beginning to come together. So first things first, the house needed to be prepared for electricity and plumbing. This meant creating grooves in the walls and installing the conduit pipes that will eventually carry the electrical wiring, along with the plumbing lines for water. A lot of this work disappears once the walls are finished, but it is some of the most important work in the entire project. This is the kind of work that most people never notice when a house is complete, but without it, the house simply cannot function. So before the walls could be finished, all these systems had to be put in place. Once the conduit and the plumbing work was completed, we could finally move on to plastering. Once I knew the plastering could go ahead, the next step was bringing in the materials that we needed. One of the most important things was sand. It's one of those things that seems simple, but without it, plastering simply cannot happen. So we arranged for sand to be delivered and prepared everything for the next stage of the project. With the materials finally on site, we were ready to begin transforming the rough walls into finished surfaces. And this part of the project actually happened a little differently than I had originally planned. My intention was to move into the tiny house before doing the plastering. I had already installed the windows and glass because I wanted a secure space where I could rest while working on the garden. The plan was to use the house as it was for a while and then complete the plastering later when the funds became available. Building honestly is not easy, even if it's just a small house, even if it's just a one-room house like mine, especially when you're working with limited resources and completing things one stage at a time. Fortunately, I was able to get some funds before I could move in, and therefore I was able to continue with the project sooner than expected. So when I got the funds, it only made sense for me to finish the plastering before moving in. The windows could always be cleaned afterwards. But if I had already moved furniture into the house, then everything would have ended up covered in cement and dust. And so that's how we found ourselves plastering a house that already had windows and also the glass installed. Inside the house, the rough surfaces slowly began disappearing as plaster was applied section by section. It's just so amazing how much difference this stage makes. The structure immediately starts looking cleaner, more complete, and much closer to a finished living space. Just like the inside, the outside of the house began taking on a much more polished appearance. Every layer of plaster brought the project one step closer to feeling like a home rather than an active construction site. With the walls progressing nicely, attention turned to another important part of the house, and that is the kitchen area. The kitchen in this super tiny house is intentionally simple. I didn't need anything elaborate. just a practical space where I can prepare meals, wash dishes, and spend time while working here on this small space. Slowly, the sink area and the countertop began taking shape. And even though it's a small kitchen, seeing it come together made the house feel far more usable than before. For me, these are some of the most exciting stages of a project because they transform an empty structure into a place that can actually support daily life. When that was being done, there was also another important piece of infrastructure that needed to be installed, although most people will never see it once everything is complete, and that is the biodigester and the sock pit. Before we could install the biodigester, we had to make a small adjustment to the original plan. As the project evolved, I decided to switch the positions of the bathroom and the toilet. That meant some of the work we had already done needed to be revisited. We had to dig up the new toilet area and install the waste pipe that would eventually connect the toilet to the biodigester system. This is one of those changes that happens during a build. Sometimes a layout looks good on paper, but once the structure starts taking shape, you realize another arrangement makes more sense. Making the change at this stage was much easier than living with a layout I wasn't completely happy with later on. This is one of those parts of a project that isn't particularly visible, but it is absolutely essential. Along with the sock pit, the biodigester will help manage waste from the tiny house and ensure the space remains functional and comfortable to use. A lot of work happens underground long before anyone notices the finished result above ground. And this was one of the most exciting parts of the project. It is certainly one of the most important ones as well. By the end of all this work, the tiny house looked very different from where it had been just a short time earlier. The electrical and the plumbing systems were in place, the walls had been plastered, the kitchen area was beginning to take shape, and the biodigester system was now installed. There is still plenty of work ahead, but little by little, this tiny house is becoming a functional space where I can spend my time, work on the garden, and continue building this dream. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. If you have been enjoying the rebuilding series and haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing and joining us as we continue transforming this tiny space. And if you're new here and you'd like to see how this journey began, I am going to leave a link in the pinned comment to this video. As always, thank you for being here, and I am going to see you in the next video.